Partners of Sleeptalkers or Sleepwalkers, what gems have you to share? We were freshly married and living overseas. My husband hadn't had much sleep the nights before, which usually enhances any sleep talking. It was hot in our room. My husband mumbled something which I didn't quite catch. I asked him to repeat it. He got up, opened the bathroom window, and said very politely, "Airflow, B," then laid back down, completely asleep. Now, my husband has never, not once, ever called me a name or even raised his voice to me, so this is particularly hilarious. That sounds like a fun way to kick off your marriage. My boyfriend once blurted out, "You're putting bread in my ears," in his sleep, mumbled something unintelligible, and then followed up with, "And I'm becoming a sandwich." Still makes me laugh whenever I remember. Yeah, well, I guess when you're sleeping, logic kinda goes out the window. I'm a sleep talker. A long while back, my fiancée was working a job where she didn't get home until after midnight. She came home one night and was leaning over the table on my side of the bed. She swears up and down that I looked up at her, smacked her on the top of the head, and when she asked what the heck that I told her, I was checking to see if she was a ghost. Now, I do remember having a dream like this, but in my dream, my hands did go through her head, proving she was a ghost. See, the craziest part to me about all this is like, if you've been sleeping alone for pretty much your whole life, you could be a sleep talker and never know it. I've had a funnier experience than this one, but cannot remember exactly what I said. Most recently, though, my boyfriend scoots over to me to be a big spoon, little spoon, and I snuggle in, thinking that's all it was. Then he gets really close to my ear and whispers, "Just so you know, there's something in the closet, like a cartoon turtle." I did my best not to burst out laughing and just said, "Okay, honey." When he woke up, he had no memory of it whatsoever, of course. So wait, the Ninja Turtles now hang out in closets? I thought it was sewers. Roommate freshman year of college was a sleepwalker and sleep talker. We were in freshman dorms, small little room. I woke up one night and saw him sitting straight up on the side of the bed, just staring at me, eyes fully open, just talking gibberish about golf. He was going on about Phil Mickelson or something. Have to be honest, it was creepy because he was staring directly into my eyes. The next morning I told him about it and he just laughed and said, "Sorry, I tend to do that from time to time." Gotta be honest, it's kind of strange that so many people find sleepwalking funny. If I just saw somebody in my house just walk into my room in the middle of the night, I mean, I'd be pretty freaked out. It almost looks like they're like possessed or something. He got up, went into the kitchen, and ate one bite of a mini pecan pie. No fork, just a straight bite. Then apparently remembered he hates pecan pie and left it stacked neatly on the little box. Another time, he sat up and stared straight ahead at the wall. Didn't respond to me, asking what was wrong. He stood up, walked into the wall, then stood there like he was contemplating the barrier. He just backed up exactly as he came, sat down and swung back into bed like nothing happened. That was creepy. Yeah, see, some people find it creepy. It's kind of funny though, I don't know that I've ever heard of somebody eating in their sleep. My aunt likes to tell the story of her and my cousin sharing a hotel room one time. My aunt woke up having to pee and found my cousin sitting up in bed with her arms folded across her abdomen, kind of rocking back and forth and giggling quietly. When my aunt asked her what she was doing, my cousin said, "I'm holding a baby and it has an adult smile." I found this story deeply unsettling. Yeah, I guess like the only first-hand stories I have are like a couple times that my family was in a hotel room. And apparently sometimes I sing in my sleep, which doesn't surprise me one bit. He started shouting that he couldn't feel his left arm. I pointed out that he was pinching his pillow, not his arm. He then freaked out that he had lost his arm. I pointed out his arm was under the pillow. He said okay and started snoring. It took me another hour to get back to sleep. He didn't wake up at all. It's just so funny, like the weird concerns people have when they're just kind of living in their own heads. My mom sleepwalks sometimes. When she was in the middle of her residency, she came into my room in the middle of the night and sharply asked, "Did you give the patient her dose of medication like I asked you 15 minutes ago?" I groggily replied, "Who? What?" She just huffed and said, "Well, I guess that answers my question," before turning around and leaving. Without closing the door, of course. She didn't remember a thing about it the next morning. You know, maybe that's a sign that you've been working a little bit too much lately. My girlfriend was sleepwalking one night. She says, "Can we get that done this week?" I say, "Huh?" She says, "Can we get that done this week?" I say, "Sorry?" She says, "Can we get that done this week, please?" I say, "Okay." She says, "Thanks." See, I think it's especially interesting when they're not just talking to themselves in their sleep, but they're actually hearing you and sort of communicating with you in the process. My brother did that in the middle of the night. He would get up, go into the living room, say some nonsense to our parents, and go back to bed. It was actually pretty creepy the first time, because he was like, "They are in the walls. They are." Well, I hope you at least checked inside your walls to find out what he was talking about. Napping with the boyfriend. A loud noise wakes me, but he's still out. I say, "What was that?" He says, "Either a tree or a magic eraser." Well, I mean, let's be honest, they are pretty indistinguishable. My wife started screaming one night that she was lost in the local grocery store, and that no matter where she went, she couldn't find her way out. I asked her, has she tried checking out at the cash register? She then looked at me and said in her most sincere voice, "That's why you are the smartest person I know." And she rolled over and fell back asleep. See, I've definitely noticed in a lot of my dreams is like you can be in a place that you know, yet everything about it is just not correct. Like the entrances and the exits aren't in the right place, you can't find your way around. Everything looks completely different. In fact, it probably doesn't even resemble the place you're thinking of, yet your brain is still convincing you that that's where you are. I'm a sleep talker here. Got this from my wife the next morning. So I sit bolt upright. They're coming. Everything's ready. My wife says, huh? They're coming. Everything's ready. She says, they're coming? Mm-hmm. But everything's ready. Yes. Okay, sounds like we're okay then. So I comically flop back down and instantly go back to sleep. You know I mention Malcolm in the Middle a lot on this channel, but in that show at one point his dad is sleepwalking, and he actually uses that to get secrets out of him and talk him into things, basically like he's hypnotized. So I wonder how accurate that kind of thing is. Ex-roommate talked in his sleep. Once he cried out, "No, Gandalf!" Well, I hope you didn't wake him up. He was getting to live Lord of the Rings for a night. My wife was mumbling a lot and suddenly shouted, "Donkey, kick!" as she kicked me in the shin. So that was fun. Well, apparently you can use the sleepwalking or sleep-kicking excuse for just abusing your partner. So one time, my ex was asleep and started to snore progressively loud. He startled himself half awake, and he says out loud to himself, "Shut up, I'm sleeping." Oh, I snorted my drink through my nose. Yeah, it is kind of weird. If you're startled awake by something, sometimes it's like your brain is only half working, and you're kind of responding to what your mind was already on, which was the dream, which isn't really happening. When I was a child about 5 years old, I was sleeping in my parents' bed for some reason. Mom was awake, Dad and I were asleep. Suddenly my father and I have cross-sleep conversation while my mom lays between us. Quietly freaked out. "Dad, you better not take my toys," I mutter angrily. "Okay, I won't," my father responds. "Don't even touch them." "Okay." Not particularly scintillating conversation, but notable for the fact that we were both asleep and still responding to each other. It was like making Alexa and Siri talk to each other. See, I know that some of this kind of stems from people just being more, aware of their surroundings while they're sleeping, but I kind of wonder how much of it is just, people are so conditioned to be responding to a certain person that they would even do that in their sleep. You know, like the saying, it's so easy they could do it in their sleep. My grandfather was a hard sleep talker. My grandmother has a funny story. One day my grandfather was sleeping while saying, "Do I punch this a-hole?" My grandmother replied, "Yeah, punch him." Then my grandfather, in his sleep, punched her. Well, I guess he kinda asked for it. My wife was an avid sleep talker for a long time, and her midnight announcements range from simple, single words to elaborate speeches. The one that really stands out to me are, waking up in the middle of the night to her suddenly sitting up violently in bed, throwing back the covers, and screaming, "Tarantula!" That will make you very awake very quickly. Then whispering my name repeatedly, which woke me up, so she could share in a hushed, cautious voice, "There's an alligator in here." When I expressed my concern, playing along, she told me, still whispering, that it's okay, it's been here before. But my all-time favorite was when, from her perspective, as she later explained, she was dreaming that I was playfully sneaking up on her, and she saw me and was calling me on it. From my perspective, my wife sat up in the middle of the night, staring into the darkest corner of the room, and said repeatedly in a soft song voice, "I see you." My flipping blood froze. You know, some people might say, "Oh, I hope I never marry a sleep talker." But I think this would be kind of entertaining. I wouldn't mind it so much. This actually happened last night. My fiancée started to talk to me like we had never met before, and after a minute I realized that she was dreaming about our first date. It was really wholesome, and I was surprised at how much detail she remembers. Man, wholesome stories are fun and all, but they're usually the hardest to make a joke about. My mom used to wake me up for school because I'd sleep through my alarms. She had a bunch of stories about weird stuff I'd said to her right before waking. "He's not here, check down the street." Or, "Just put it on the roof and it'll blow away." I wonder what he's referring to with that. So my boyfriend either recites postcodes as a delivery driver or calls the dog in his sleep. So either he's mad no one is responding to his postcode nonsense, or I get a flying 30-kilogram dog to my body. The dog's like, "I don't care if you're sleeping, I'm coming." My girl woke up one night and said, "Did you find your rocks?" And I asked her what she was talking about, and she said, "I don't know, I'm just trying to make conversation," and probably went back to sleep. She has no recollection of this. Yeah, the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep does seem like a good time to just hold a conversation for whatever reason. One night, my boyfriend woke me up in the middle of the night, tapped me on the shoulder, he puts his finger on his mouth and whispers, "Shush," to me, then pointed at the door and told me, "I can hear something, don't move." Predictably, I nearly crapped my pants. All the worst possible scenarios crossed my mind, and the moment of silence after he shushed me felt like hours. Then he started waving his hands and talking about Tetris, the twirlies, and making sure we don't align. And that's how I learned my boyfriend talks in his sleep. Man, it sounds like he's having 3 dreams at the same time. Husband woke up in the morning and told me about a crazy dream he had. We were hosting a party and he was serving cookies. He was upset that nobody was eating them. When he went downstairs, we discovered a full plate of cookies sitting on our dining table. Well, I hope you enjoyed all these weird stories of things people do in their sleep. Like I said, this is kind of a hard story to have personal experience with when you always sleep alone, but let me know if you guys have any good stories in this topic.